Hello everyone, welcome to Psychedelics Today. This is David Rapkin, your host, having a conversation with Professor Celia Morgan. This was back in April at Breaking Convention at the University of Exeter, where Celia works, studies, and is doing some phase 3 clinical trial research with Awakn and with the University of Exeter. So we talked about those pieces in particular. Phenomenal research, amazing outcomes from phase 2 for alcohol use disorder. And Celia was also talking about life in Cornwall, in a kind of the windy farmland of the southwest of England. And she mentioned, some of the work she did in Brazil, studying ceremonial ayahuasca use. And it was just a lovely conversation. So cool to dive into the clinical protocols, the importance of mindfulness in particular. So thank you very much, Celia. I wanted to let you know, folks, if you haven't yet subscribed to our podcast, why not? Go ahead and do it. We are everywhere. Our social media channels are open for business. So come like us, follow us, and just check out what we're up to. Lots of events and webinars coming up. So if you want to go to our main website, psychedelicstoday.com, you can click on events. We've also got backlog blog articles and our podcast there, and our training, psychedeliceducationcenter.com. Lots of it, and all different sizes and types. Some free, some not free. So go check that out. Comments, feedback, we'd love some. info@psychedelicstoday.com. And if you are feeling generous, you can go to patreon.com/psychedelicstoday. All right, enjoy this show. Take care, folks.
Are you curious about reaching an altered state of consciousness without the use of substances? Here's where Luminate comes in. Luminate is an app that uses research-backed stroboscopic light sequences from your phone's flashlight to neurologically guide you into an altered state of consciousness, somewhere between that of a deep meditation and classic psychedelics. All you need to do is get comfortable, turn your phone so the flashlight is facing you, close your eyes, then fall effortlessly into an immersive journey through a kaleidoscope of colors created by your subconscious. What to expect: an almost instant meditative state, closed-eye visuals, vivid fractals, an increased sense of relaxation, and a notable reduction in sense of self, body awareness, and sense of time. Luminate can also help improve your relationship with sleep and decrease feelings of stress and anxiety. The best part, unlike classic psychedelics and substances, you can start, pause, or stop the experience at any time. You can download the app for free today using the link in the show notes, and we hope you enjoy the journey.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Psychedelics Today. This is David Drapkin in my lovely home country of England at Breaking Convention at the University of Exeter with Professor Celia Morgan. We're in person, looking at each other, having coffee and breakfast, and just been chatting for half an hour. So it's really awesome to be together, Celia. How are you doing?
Yeah, good, thanks. Great to be here as well.
So we just chatted about all kinds of things to do with work and chickens and football, lots about ketamine. I think a place I want to start is, how does it feel being here at the University of Exeter, your kind of home turf, welcoming people from all over the world to talk about psychedelics and what that means to us right now? What's that like?
It's so exciting. I'm absolutely thrilled that we've got Breaking Convention here at Exeter this year. And it's just, I think, a sign, we know the world's kind of woken up to psychedelics, but it really feels like it's happening. And just really excited to welcome people here to our campus. So really looking forward to it. I mean, the program's so stellar. There's almost too much thing on. I want to be everywhere at once.
We're here like before it's actually started. So it's 8 o'clock in the morning. Where the first talk and welcome hasn't happened, but it's going to be an amazing event, and I'm really looking forward to it. I think a nice question is, like, who are you? As a human being, before we kind of get into the clinical scientific stuff. Can you just tell people, just like as a human being, how would you describe yourself and how you live your life?
So I don't know if I can do like kind of descriptive side first and then go deeper. I guess I'm a mum, to 2 kids. I live by the sea. I really feel very like nature is something that's really, really important to me. So that's why I work here in Devon and why I live in nature, and I get so much out of that. Yeah, I guess I'm a curious and enthusiastic human being. Yeah. I'll have a think.
Yeah.
Get back to you if I come up with more things.
Yeah,
I'm sure there's a lot more to me, obviously, David. But
yeah. And what's it like living by the sea in Cornwall?
Yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, it's really brilliant and sometimes brutal. You really feel the extremes of weather. I love living in London. I lived in London for years, but I really felt this calling back to the countryside. I grew up out in the wild, and I feel like nature's kind of really wafted into me. And that kind of cyclical thing with all the seasons and seeing everything change is something that's really important to me. So yeah, it's been great to be able to go back there and get back to that sort of way of living, and still get to do really exciting stuff, like the work that we're doing at the moment. So.
And you're a professor of psychopharmacology.
Yeah.
Can you tell people what kind of area, discipline that focuses on, and maybe what pathway you took and the stages in your career professionally that kind of brought you to this level?
Yeah, sure. So it's a bit of a mouthful, the psychopharmacology, but it is the effects of drugs on the brain and behavior, really, and the area that I've focused on. Well, two areas really: substance use disorders and looking at drugs that enhance psychological therapies. Because my undergraduate was in psychology, and then I did my first kind of assistant psychologist job in substance use service in Camden. And yeah, I just I don't know, something really struck a chord with me, with the problems people suffer with substance use disorders. And, I've got a lot of personal history in my family and a lot of people struggling with alcohol problems. So yeah, that was something that was really important to me. But fascinated by psychedelics. I was quite alternative when I was younger and quite into the squat scene in London. And so grew up around that and started to see ketamine kind of emerge there first in free parties and things, and saw the transformative effects of psychedelics as well. So yeah, got into researching that a bit. I did a PhD about ketamine. Originally, I was interested in understanding, the impact it has on consciousness, but I didn't get that far with that at that point. I'm going to come back to that. Ended up looking at kind of beliefs and doing some acute ketamine studies as part of my PhD, but then started looking as well at people using a lot of ketamine. So what happens to both recreational or non-medical users, positive and negative, and then people who end up with ketamine dependence. So had these kind of two streams of work, and yeah. And then I did, a few postdocs, which is what you do after your PhD. Went out to the States for a bit, as we were talking about, and in New Haven for a little bit, and then over to Australia in Melbourne. So I've been really lucky to go to some cool places, but came back to London to start my lectureship at UCL, and then I moved down to Devon when I had my kids, really. And yeah, now I'm here as a professor. I think, that's basically it. And I mean, it's kind of a weird trajectory, I guess, because I started out researching ketamine use, really focusing on that, and that was what I was known for, and then came back to using ketamine as a therapy, later on as the climate was changing a bit, when ketamine emerged as an antidepressant in psychiatry. So yeah, that seems kind of a confusing path, I guess, but it's something I'm looking forward to talking about at Breaking Convention, in our session. I'm going to be talking about the potential of ketamine as a therapeutic, but also the dependence forming side. So it's cool. I'm hoping to bring them back together somehow.
Yeah, let's talk about it, because growing up as a kid in England, but also in America, you're stuffed with this: drugs are bad.
Yeah.
There's no way that they can be good.
Yeah.
And they're still Schedule 1 in America.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting that they can, they obviously can be very addictive and destructive.
Yeah.
All drugs, alcohol, definitely, we're going to talk about that in the studies. But how can they also be helpful? And why is it that people use drugs? What are some of the reasons why people are drawn to that? So I really want to dive into this. What is this? What determines a person's relationship with drugs, and how does that relationship evolve? And how do we work with people to just see how their relationship with drug use could be more positive?
Yeah, no, and that's kind of the key question, isn't it? Sort of what we're aiming for. And I always think, people always focus on the drugs, right? But it's more about the people. And as you say, their relationship, what are you getting from that? What are you getting from that experience? The drugs themselves are just tools. You can, hit someone over the head with a spade, or you can take an amazing garden. I see the drugs as the spade, basically. But obviously a really unusual spade. a ketamine or psychedelics paid. But yeah, I think it's really important to focus on what function they're serving for people. And yeah, some of them have more or less dependence forming properties. For other reasons, some people do get seduced by ketamine. And it is, like in the people I've worked with, because I spent a long time working with people, it is a kind of escapism, but also a kind of a sense of questing for some sort of meaning, I think. So I guess that's where the approach that we take in alcohol treatment, using the drugs as just a kind of window to not be so rigidly fixed to your one kind of perspective on life, and that your consciousness is much more than this, and to kind of boost people out of the rut of their lives, and then do the work really about finding meaning and do that in the therapy really. So just using the drugs really to catalyze that shift, because people, as I'm sure you know, you're a psychotherapist, when people get really entrenched, and I just see them as really, really powerful agents for that. And that's why I think it can exist as both, and used with care and responsibly, they can be amazing. It's such a privilege to work with people and work with these substances and see the transformations in people's lives, and long-lasting transformations. People who've had struggles with alcohol for years and years. Some of our people have gone through like 10 detoxes, and then they try this and it works. And and it's just, it's really gratifying. Like, it doesn't work for everyone, but for some people it does. And I think to be able to, we just need to be really responsible with how we use the drugs, and how we just take care that we're looking out for the risks, so we don't undermine their huge potential, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one piece you were just talking about, Celia, was where people get seduced by the drug.
Yeah.
And for me, I think if the drug is the only part of your life that gives pleasure or escape or meaning or just neutrality even, then people come back to it as an escape.
Yeah.
But if it's part of this more kind of global, ecological, biopsychosocial opening and integration between different parts of their life and their family, their reality, then it can be part of that. It can be like in a certain juncture, it can really help infuse it with an openness.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's where the psychotherapy comes in. So maybe as a nice question, we're going to talk loads about ketamine. The KARE protocol in particular that Awakn has, that you're working on, that's coming into the NHS, for the trials. What would you say is really specific about the psychotherapeutic protocol that you've been working on to help people get the most out of their ketamine therapy sessions?
Well, the protocol we're working on is a really good question. And what we've been using basically is around a kind of mindfulness-based relapse prevention. So teaching people kind of mindfulness skills and using a bit of values work. So the stuff we were talking about, like building meaning into your life and looking at other ways, to replace the function that alcohol is serving for you. I guess it's worth saying, we've been working on it, and we're working with an amazing team at the moment, actually, as we're going into our phase 3 trial. So people, who are in recovery, who are counsellors, all sorts of people, like some of the leading addiction people from the country. And we're really trying to get it into the best form we can. But one of the things I felt really passionate about is that this should be, a treatment that be available for the many, not just for the few. So one of the things that's dictated the kind of approach that we've used is that it's a treatment that's able to be delivered in the NHS by a therapist, with a relatively low amount of training. So, I think there's probably different ways to make this therapy even better, but then they might end up being much more resource intensive. And so, for better or worse, trying to take a very pragmatic approach. So, because we're going around these kind of 10 NHS trusts and saying, you're going to need to get a therapist doing this many hours. And the idea is, once we've run that trial, if it's a success, then they will keep delivering the therapy. So that's so exciting. But balancing against, our regulators here in the UK, it's very different to the US. NICE are the people who decide whether the NHS can provide treatments or not. And cost effectiveness is a big component of that. So it is a bit different. So we're trying to make it as effective as we can. And we chose mindfulness really because the feeling that ketamine provides this sort of experiential stepping stone to mindfulness practice. We've actually just finished a study where we've been looking at mindfulness brief mindfulness intervention and a single ketamine dose with some harmful drinkers, and then looking at mindfulness practice pre and post. And actually people do engage with the mindfulness much better and they find themselves getting more out of it. Not every aspect of mindfulness, because obviously there's a lot to mindfulness. But I think the bit of kind of taking a step back from your thoughts and not being over-engaged with everything you're doing, the ketamine really helps to facilitate that, because they can see how that works, And sometimes mindfulness can be really tricky, right? Like mindfulness practice is hard work.
Yeah.
So it's obviously this is a kind of boost that makes it work better in that first bit. Especially when people are struggling. So the people in our trials become abstinent and then start, within about a month. So they're in a tough spot at that point, taking alcohol away when it serves such a function for you for a long, long time. They'll have detox, but they're still quite low. So yeah, I think the ketamine, to my mind, gives this kind of boost and insight that can help engage them with the therapy going forward. So I don't know if I answered your question, David.
That's brilliant. Mindfulness, I think, is great to be using, because it gives people skills to build and that relationship with their inner world.
Yeah.
And in being, insight focused. So it's like they can then go away with that and work on it.
Yeah. And hopefully build it into a longer program. So I guess our therapy is pretty short. It's a kind of a brief intervention in a way.
Yeah.
It's like 7 sessions. And this again is to do with this, trying to make it something that's available for everyone, that's really scalable. So 7 hour-and-a-half long sessions and 3 ketamine doses. But we're building, as part of our new trial, we're building like an ongoing, hopefully self-sustaining peer support network, which we call the trial KARE, so I'm calling it aftercare. So imaginative.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's KARE with a K, everybody.
Yeah, KARE with a K.
Yeah.
To make ketamine sound more friendly.
That's awesome.
But yeah, so that would be something that would be free, hopefully. I'm really excited about that. We're working with some brilliant people who are people in recovery who've been doing a lot of nature connection work. So the idea is to build something that could be online with principles behind it that people can just follow, and then hopefully have a celebration weekend in nature. Once you, as a kind of following a bit of a, not strictly 12-step program, but a bit like that, because that, people do slag it off, but there's some great wisdom in there.
Yeah, the peer support bit is awesome.
Yeah. And something that's self-sustaining so that people can continue to, the integration work, I guess. But yeah, at the moment we're developing, what the guidelines and the rules, the kind of content for that will be. So hoping to get really inspired from breaking convention, because there's so much wisdom here, looking around at the program.
I love that you're talking about peer support, but also nature. So maybe going to your place in Cornwall with your clients, and they can help to dig up the veg patch up there. And
taste the chickens.
Bring them together. I wanted to tell people, so Celia mentioned NICE, the National Institute for Clinical Excellence, and they have rejected Spravato, I think 3 times.
Yeah, they're really not keen.
Because it's not cost effective. It's so expensive.
Yeah.
I didn't swear there, I nearly did. It's so expensive.
Yeah.
MDMA-assisted therapy, will NICE approve that? It's going to be in America 15 to 20 grand for a sequence of treatments.
Yeah.
So yeah, I totally hear what you're saying. You've got to make it affordable to the public health service.
Yeah, I mean, that's, I guess, coming from my UK-centric perspective. I mean, obviously there are other public health services. But yeah, I mean, it's short-sighted. I mean, I don't know with the Spravato, I wouldn't like to comment, because I'm not really into that model of maintenance medication with ketamine, and there's no therapy in it. But I feel like with our treatment, we were looking at people at 6 months, you see long-lasting changes with it's quite an intense intervention. And same, the MDMA MAP stuff is life-changing for some people. And so it's short-sighted to say it's too expensive now, because longer term, that's going to be hugely cost-effective. And it's more than cost-effective, isn't it? It's about people's lives. So there should be no financial constraints on that. But yeah, it's just being pragmatic in a non-ideal world. I guess that's what I like, with an eye on the kind of NICE perspective on it. I'd really like to see this coming out, because it could be also a gateway to these other treatments becoming more acceptable, I think, as well. Maybe, I don't know, I can never figure out whether ketamine's kind of broken the ground for the psychedelics coming through, or whether it's going to be a problem because it's kind of gone a different route. So yeah, it's interesting. But I feel like this kind of ketamine-assisted psychotherapy, if we can set this up in NHS settings, then that will be, the kind of infrastructure will be there to run other psychedelic-assisted therapies. So, because that's the tricky thing, is really it needs a bit of a radical shift. Alcohol services as they are currently are not set up really to deliver this. So that's where we're hopefully doing a bit of that work to preempt, hopefully, legal changes that mean these other medicines aren't Schedule 1 anymore.
Yeah. And I know you're doing some work with gambling as well, but maybe just on the alcohol use disorder phase 3 trial.
Yeah.
That's pretty epic. And I think it was announced recently. So that Awakn, University of Exeter are going to do a phase 3 trial. And it's got quite a bit of funding from the National Institute for Health and Care Research and the Medical Research Council here in Britain. So this is government public funding for psychedelic-assisted research, which is phenomenal.
Yes.
So congratulations.
Thank you.
That's amazing.
Well, it's not just me, obviously, there's a huge team of people, but it's really exciting. Well, it's lovely as well because we did this phase 2 and all the people have come back to work on the phase 3. So this must be, we've got such an amazing team, which, lots of them are here at the conference. So it's a big shout out to them. But it's so exciting. Stroke terrifying.
Yeah, it's big. Tell people,
a lot of things to organise.
What's the kind of population size and how many clinical centres are going to be used?
Yeah, so it's 280 patients over 10 NHS sites. Wow. So we're doing and trying to get a broad geographical spread within the UK, which is obviously ridiculously small compared to the US. But so we're going a bit of Scotland and the north of the UK and London, and then down here in the southwest and Oxford. And different settings we're running the trial in. So that comes back to what I was saying, about looking at eventually how we would implement this on a broader scale. So what's the infrastructure we need? And what's great, I think, so the funding comes from the Department for Health, but they put a great premium on working with people who will be the end users of it. So we've got a huge stream of kind of public involvement and working with people in recovery across all these different geographical areas, building units to kind of talk about the treatment and how it's working at every stage of it, really, to get that input, which is really crucial. Because I can sit in my, whatever ivory tower and come up with these ideas, but without trying them out with the people who are actually going to receive them. It's brilliant. I'm really excited. So we're looking hopefully opening to recruitment in December of this year. So it takes a long time to get the frustrating machinery of a clinical trial up and running. But it's exciting. And like I said, we've just got such a brilliant team across the whole of the UK. So hopefully it will be something that's, if we find, our endpoints, if it's successful, something we can roll out more widely internationally. So
what are the clinical sites going to be like? Particularly, are they going to be like a GP's practice, or would there be in an addiction treatment centre?
Yeah, no, well, I mean, it's interesting, in the UK, addiction treatment services have largely been decommissioned from the NHS. There's still some NHS ones, but actually we're doing, so in Oxford, Rupert McShane, who's one of the collaborators on the grant, he runs a ketamine clinic for depression. So that's an NHS one, but they see private patients, and so it funds the NHS side of it. So we're going to be running it there because they're set up for doing ketamine infusions. Similarly in Sussex. Other ones we're running in something called the Clinical Research Facility, which is basically a research facility where we can have, because these will be infusions and we'll need a therapist, you need a kind of sort of a special room. I mean, we don't have, they're not as nice as some of the rooms you see in some psychedelic therapy trials, but we do try. The NHS just won't let you even have a plant in the room. Apparently, It's a health and safety violation.
Having a plant
in
case it catches fire.
Terrible. Yeah, health and safety. It's it's health and safety not to have a plant.
Oh God,
it's really weird. Yeah, so we're up against all of that. But no, So various different. There is one alcohol service. I think we'll run it within the service. So what would be quite nice is to see how it works in slightly different settings. But they're all NHS treatment services. So, and we'll be using therapists. So in the UK, we have something called Improving Access to Psychological Therapy, where we train. It's a kind of cognitive behavioural therapy workforce, so like a type of psychological therapy for people who don't, I don't know what your listeners are probably quite aware of psychological therapies, I imagine. So if they didn't know what CBT is. But so we're training up CBT therapists. So again, it's all about kind of scalability. And there's this huge workforce in the UK, so we can kind of upskill them to work on these studies. But fingers crossed.
And you said, hopefully this is going to mainstream in the NHS around Britain, but also internationally. And I know Awakn's got some licensing partnerships, I think, in USA, in Canada. And there's one in particular that I know. I've been to their clinic in New York City, New Shama, and they've just started actually dosing their first couple of patients, I think, with the KARE protocol.
Yeah.
So I'm fascinated by like how already your work is now in Manhattan.
I know, that's
working with people there, because I've worked in the hospital system in Manhattan.
Yeah.
In Harlem, it's fucking intense.
Yeah.
So intense there. Like,
it's
really, really hard. So I'm so happy.
Yeah.
That this is already getting there.
Well, and hopefully, I'm from what I understand, I'm not really involved in that like side of the Awakn stuff because I'm on the research side. I think they are quite. That sounds like an amazing space, but it's probably only for certain types of people, right? So
it's private.
Maybe we have different kind of levels of the therapy, so that it is something maybe that can get into like the Harlem. I don't know if there's a way to get it as something that's accessible for more people.
Yeah.
Who, let's face it, really do need it. There's a lot of need for people and people struggling with addictions of different kinds. I mean, I don't think it's something that's necessarily specific to alcohol. So we've been doing some work with gambling that you mentioned, and gambling, I don't know, it's big. People are becoming more and more aware of it, but it's somehow slightly overlooked, I think. Maybe, I mean, it's not been big on the treatment agenda, really, but I think people are realizing that it's just got a devastating impact on people's lives.
Yeah.
Like really horrendous, some of the people that we speak to. So, yeah, and it seems that we have not done a clinical trial, but it seems to be certainly a treatment that's really tolerable, and we're getting some good effects in our early work with gamblers. So, yeah, I don't see that much like, psychedelics. I think in general, there's probably a treatment mechanism. It's probably not specific necessarily to a modality, is it? That's just how the regulators work at the moment. And like, what indication is this drug for? But actually, there's some more just broad changes in people's outlook and well-being that these compounds with therapy evoke. So, yeah, it would be nice to try and do that work as well, to sort of roll out a bit more. Certainly in our phase 3 trial, we're looking at people with bit of comorbidities. With the phase 2, they said we couldn't have people who had any other substance use problems. And there's pros and cons of that. But often clinical trials, I think, focus on very, very pure, like completely unrealistic populations of people because, so it's not, like people who drink probably would maybe take other drugs. They'll focus on drinking. People have got their primary substance, but I think if you exclude all those people, it's not going to be representative of the people that would be getting this treatment when it goes out there. So, yeah, we fought quite hard to try and get like at least a representative population.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. I wanted to talk about ketamine in the context of other psychedelic medicines and compounds and how you might see it panning out in the future, maybe especially with alcohol use disorder. So, MDMA and ketamine, there's been trials. I think you've been involved in some MDMA work in the past. And then there's other trials happening right now in America with, or maybe Canada and America, with mescaline and psilocybin. And the psilocybin one has some pretty good efficacy. So I'm wondering, what is about ketamine that maybe is good for addiction? And how can ketamine and these others like psilocybin, mescaline, MDMA, how can they all kind of fit into this like menu and a triage system and knowing which kinds of patients with different demographics and comorbidities and histories might be better suited? Generally speaking, everyone's different, but generally speaking, how might like a really skillful therapist work with a client to say, let's work with MDMA or with psilocybin to work with you?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a brilliant question, David. And I think it's something that we don't yet know, perhaps, how to do that. But I think that's the dream, isn't it? That you could have that menu, and even not just say, like, we'll just do this one thing throughout the whole process, but like, we'll use MDMA, like there's to build some trust, or I don't know, all, like in different ways I could see, and different points of the therapy, like ketamine is quite good at that. Like we said, the observer perspective side of things. And in a way, I guess people can get less of the challenging experiences maybe from psilocybin, or challenging with a kind of numbing effect. But yeah, I mean, I think this is something we really need to get into. And I think there's space for all of them, basically. Ketamine's easiest to work with at the moment because it's Schedule 2, not Schedule 1, but that looks like it's changing everywhere. So it'd be great. I know, like Michael Bogenschutz, who's done the psilocybin alcohol work, and I think it would be great to work, together and look at how different therapies work with the drugs as well, because I think that's something that's really missing from the conversation, again, because we've got this, but to someone, Tazine calls it pharmacologicalism, which is like focusing on the drug rather than all the stuff around it. And we know that with these compounds, it's like even the narrative you tell about them, as the experience changes it. So there's so much more to what makes them work than just the drug itself. So, but yeah, I'd love to do some work looking at the different therapies and how they interact with them, and looking at how, I think, and I'm hopeful that we could maybe collect data on that as well, as from real world evidence as these treatments are being used. I mean, they are being used around the world, right? So why don't we start looking at that? We could do that now. It would be really great to all come together to do that,
Yeah.
in a collaborative fashion. Because I think that's how we really, get stronger and make really the serious advances, is by working together on this stuff, right? But yeah, no, it's exciting.
Yeah, that sounds great. Just the way you described it, Celia, just imagining if all these experts in their little kind of atomized little bubbles came together and said, look, here are all the medicines that we know work. Here are all the different therapy protocols and theories and models that we can use. Let's really bring them together and just understand how to help people the most, especially, thinking people with trauma, different kinds of trauma, different family histories, different, epigenetics, how you want to work with someone, build that relationship. And it's never ending. And I think we're just at the beginning of it, so we don't know.
Yeah, no, totally. And I think that there is that wisdom out there, and not just from the experts, like people, but like the experts who, taking these substances and work with them in other ways, like not in a medical setting necessarily. Like there's so much information we could gather, and wisdom from the community. So that's why it's cool being, I keep talking about breaking convention, but here, because it feels like this is like the hive mind is here as well. So we've got to, I think that would be something really exciting for the future, I think. It's the one slight issue with some of, I guess, the more corporate stuff, people trying to compete with each other. And I think that's like got to be to the detriment of the field, really. So hopefully we can all be open-hearted, open-minded.
Yeah, I think definitely breaking convention, it has that vibe to it.
Yeah,
totally. We're all the same here. We like to have a bit of fun as well.
Yeah.
We've got about 5 minutes to go. So
Sure.
I wanted to ask you about your time in Brazil.
Oh, yeah.
You mentioned that just before we press record. So you were saying you went over there and helped some people with research they were working on. Can you just talk more about that?
Yeah, so no, I just became interested in ayahuasca, just, like learning about it a bit. And I worked with someone called Simon Ruffle. I don't know if you know. So I got a grant, and so unfortunately I didn't get to go because of my kids. Not that I blame the kids, but Simon and Nigel went to the jungle and did the research, and I just sat there with the data. But we did some work looking at epigenetic changes from ayahuasca. But I also had the opportunity to go out and work with an amazing group in Brazil, Rafael dos Santos and Dame Halak, and they're in University of Sao Paulo, which is actually in Ribeirão Preto, which is like a kind of flight from Sao Paulo.
Yeah.
But I went out there. They've been doing some work looking at ayahuasca, the kind of antidepressant properties, in a lab setting, But they're amazing what they've managed to achieve with like very little funding, and quite and there's just so much enthusiasm. I was really lucky when I was there. There happened to be like a ceremony at the Santo Daime Church, so I went and got to experience that way with ayahuasca, which I thought was really fascinating to see how the whole community was there, really, and old people and really young people and children even, and the way everyone came together and the sense of peace really in the ceremony. And everyone, I don't speak Portuguese. I think I was the only, no one did speak English apart from Rafa, who was on the other side of the room. but I had a sense, well, by the end I thought I could speak Portuguese. So that was but just a beautiful sense of peace and community. And you just sort of see, there's different ways of using these substances, and they can have different functions. It was profoundly eye-opening. I'm not explaining it very articulately, but I guess that's with these things. Sometimes it's a bit ineffable, isn't it? The sense I got from it, though, of just like peace and community. And even though, I'm not necessarily like a Christian, but the sense of the Catholic mixed with the shamanic, I guess because I couldn't speak Portuguese, I probably didn't pick up on that much. But it was a lovely sense of you sit around a tree and everyone's singing these prayers. And it was just a really profoundly awe-inspiring experience. So
amazing.
Yeah,
peace, community.
Yeah.
music, singing, or
and a tree.
and a sacred tree.
Yeah.
We need that as human beings. Like that's why we love nature and mindfulness. Like you were talking about that. We need that. We miss that, and it's deeply healing.
Yeah, and the community aspect, I think that's something that's missing, from the way we have this individualized treatment system, which is why, I keep banging on about this trial, but why the end of it, I want to try and build a community, because I feel that's where to have someone like a group to hold you, that's really, really important in this healing process. And without that, I think, the treatments may flounder. So, and I guess a bit of that is inspired by seeing that there's Anti-Daime Church. So
it's great how open you are to these, non-clinicized realities. One final question: cannabis.
Yeah,
I can't let you go without talking about that. So that's something I really feel strongly we're going to see more and more over the next decade being used in kind of transdiagnostically as huge potential CBD.
Yeah,
especially like. What's your experience been of it as a medicine, and do you have any feelings about how it could end up being used as a medicine or as a kind of adjunctive medicine even?
Yeah, we did a clinical trial of cannabidiol, so in cannabis dependence, which is kind of interesting. I don't,
So that's CBD.
Yeah, CBD, yeah. So high dose is not like the kind of stuff that you can buy over the counter. We had 800, 400, and 200 milligrams. And it did seem to show like people cut down on one of the doses with the cannabis. Yeah, I think, with the CBD, I think there's a lot of potential, isn't there? And that plant is like the number of the cannabinoids there in there, over 200. There's all the terpenes, like it's so complex. And we've just really scratched the surface. Like obviously THC is the one everyone, does the big effects, but there's so much potential in that plant, like almost medicine chest of itself. And we haven't really explored, cannabidiol is one of the cannabinoids, but there's so many more that we haven't really explored. I think, hopefully that is something that we'll see emerging. But cannabis itself it's really powerful, isn't it? On both sides, like we were talking about with ketamine, we've worked with people with cannabis dependence and have really, really strong experiences. So it's kind of been left out of the psychedelics field a bit, isn't it? But I can see maybe that taking its place maybe in the future. Yeah.
Lovely. Thank you. All right. Well, maybe it's just as a nice way to end it. Can you tell folks if they want to find out more about the work you're doing? If I don't know if you're active on social media or you have any websites, where would you tell people to go look?
I'm obviously inactive on social media. I have to get better at that. But we are actually starting a program. Yeah, so we've got an email, psychedelics@exeter.ac.uk, which is me and some of our philosophy colleagues. So do email that. Or I am on Twitter. Celia Morgan. I'll try and do it more. But and we've got Psychedelics X, the website, I think. So do you get in touch? Yeah. And if anyone's interested, in the trial who's in this country, we've got a email address. Obviously, we're not open to recruitment to December, but more-care with a K @exeter.ac.uk.
Yeah.
So do you get in touch?
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, and honestly, I like my wife and I, we have some friends that, don't have healthy relationships with alcohol and they would benefit from this. I hopefully if people listening, just tell people that you're worried about that do live in Britain that could be part of this trial.
Yeah, that would be great, Cool.
Lovely. All right, well, Professor Celia Morgan, we did it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I really enjoyed myself.
Yeah, lovely way to get the party started.
Yeah.
All right, thanks for listening, folks. Really appreciate you being here. God bless. That was a lot of fun. Great conversation with Celia. She's doing some amazing work and it was just awesome to chat, and God, Breaking Convention was good. Great time. Hope to go back next time, whenever that might be. All right, everyone. Thank you again for listening to us at Psychedelics today. See you on the other side. God bless.